الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وزوجاته أمهات المؤمنين وصحابته رضوان الله تعالى عليهم أجمعين. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Al-Furqan, the Islamic Heritage Foundation, it gives me a great honor to thank you for joining us in our third lecture that we do. The first one started with the great lady, Professor Anne-Marie Schimmel, and the second one was with the great professor, Professor Yusuf Ibish. And here I am coming to discuss with you a subject which I think is interesting, probably important, sometimes very important, and at times it touches deeply the hearts of some of us. And on behalf of the Al-Furqan, I would like to thank SOAS for making available this beautiful room, which we don't have, unfortunately, in our foundation. As I said, the subject is important, interesting. The non-Muslims who are here, if they are interested in history and archaeology, then it's an interesting subject. For the Muslims, it is important. But if they happen to be from Mecca, for instance, or descendants of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then it is very important. And if they are from those Shia and the majority of the Sunnah who believe that loving the Al-Bayt, the house of the Prophet, is something like a religious obligation, then it does touch deeply their hearts. And before really discussing with you the subject as a whole, I want you to just take a look at the discovery of the house of the Prophet. Of course, we'll have a lot of this later on. But this is not really the whole house. The house is only this side. This area is the house of Abu Sufyan, the father of Muawiyah Abu Sufyan, adjacent to this house. And as you see, of course, it's much lower than the ground in Mecca because it's an old building. So you have these stairs which brings you down. And this is a room which is for guests. They call it Hujrat al-Wufud, the guest room, that when they come. And then you come to a very small corridor, this one, as you see it. You come to three different rooms, 1, 2, and 3. This room is where our Prophet with Sayyidah Khadijah used to live. This room is where all the children were born, including السيدة فاطمة الزهراء, his daughter. Through her, you have now the descendants of the Prophet. And this room is very important. This is, we call it Hujrat al-Ta'abbud. It's the room of worshipping, and Hujrat al-Wahi, where revelation used to come and Gabriel used to come and teach him. In order to see it clearly, maybe I give another map. This map is not really very accurate. It was done on the description of Al-Batnuni, but it helps. You see, this is the hall, and this is the reception of guests. Here he called it delegates. This is the corridor. This is the praying area, Hujrat al-Ta'abbud. This is his room. And this is the room where all of his children, including As-Sayyida Fatima al-Zahra, was born. Now, before I go into the history and the historical events of this house, I want to give you the references that I used in this very brief studies. I'm not going really to go into so many details because time is limited anyway. But in Arabic literature, I used, of course, Al-Azraqi. It's the first book ever written about Mecca. And as most of you know who is Al-Azraqi, he passed away in the year 250 for Hijrah, which is 865. He was quoting his grandfather and the eminent, responsible Mecca leaders and society at that time. Then I also went to Al-Fakihi. It's the second book known in our history, and he died passed in the year 272. And then Ibn Jubair was born in 540, and Tabari, who died in 694, and then Al-Fasi, Al-Batnuni in his Rahla Al-Hijaziyya, Mir'at Al-Haramain, Ibrahim Rifat Basha, and finally A'lam Al-Hijaz for Muhammad Ali Maghrabi. Now also I went into some foreign references. The book written by John Lewis Burkhardt, The Travel in Arabia, it was published 1829. And then the personal narratives of pilgrimage to Al-Madinah and Mecca by Richard Burton, 1857. And then the famous book by the famous scholar, Dutch, Mr. Snok, Christian Snok, and volume 1, it was published in 1888. And then finally, the Holy Cities of Arabia by Eldon Rutter in 1928. These are the references that I used. Now, we go back to the history of the house as it was spelled out in these references. When the Prophet got married to Sayyida Khadijah, as most of you will know, that he was 25 years old and she was 40 years old. He got married and they lived together in this house. He spent 28 years of his life in this house. And from this house he immigrated to the city of Medina. So this house has a very remarkable historical background, how they lived together. When he immigrated to the city of Medina, his cousin, Aqil ibn Abi Talib, took over the house and became the owner of the house. And when the Prophet came to Mecca, and that's when he took over Mecca, they asked him, where are you going to live? Because they know that this is his house. And he answered, وَهَلْ تَرَكَ لَنَا عَقِيلٌ مِّن دَارٍ? Did Aqil left a house for me? And he lived in tents. And the house stayed with Aqil until Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan became the Khalifa. He wanted to buy this house because, as I mentioned before, it was, not yet. It was adjacent to his house, to the house of his father. So he bought it at 100,000 dirham. And he converted the house into a praying house. And he built what we call it mihrab. And that's where you used to face Mecca, to face the Kaaba. You will notice later, probably in some of the view graphs I'm going to show you, that when the Prophet was in Mecca at that time, he used to pray facing Jerusalem. And then, of course, in the city of Medina, Muslims were ordered to turn to Mecca rather than to Jerusalem. So Al-Mihrab, which was built by Muawiyah, was facing Mecca, and few other mihrabs. After Muawiyah, and it was then, he opened a door between the house of his father, Abu Sufyan, and this house. But this house became the praying house for a variety of Muslims. When you read some of those references I mentioned, they considered this house to be the most important place outside the Holy Mosque of Mecca. Then after that, this house was renovated during the era of Al-Khalifa Al-Nasir Lidinillah Al-Abbasi. He was a Khalifa in the year 575, corresponding to 1180. After that, the tomb, which was built on the what is called praying area. There was a tomb that built, and they called it Qubbat al-Wahy, the tomb of revelation, because Gabriel used to come with the revelation and then to teach him in this. So it was called Qubbat al-Wahy, and remained as such until the time of Al-Malik, King Al-Ashraf Sha'ban ibn Hussein ibn Al-Malik Al-Nasir Muhammad ibn Qlawun Sahib Masr. So from the year 650 until the year 764 Hijri, which is 1253 and 1363, it was the Qubba, the tomb, was renovated again. Then after that, there was some additional renovation during the time of King Al-Nasir Faraj ibn al-Malik al-Zahir Barquq, the year 801 Hijri, 1398. Then during the time of Sultan Suleiman, that is the famous, magnificent, the Turkish Sultan, the Ottoman Sultan, it was renovated again. And then during the time of Sultan Murad, again it was renovated, the whole building. During Sultan Abd al-Hamid, the director of the mosque in Mecca built some building and put on top of it a wooden piece covered with cloth. This is to indicate the exact place where As-Sayyida Fatima Al-Zahra was born. Before that, it was a white marble on the floor to show, because at that time, Sayyida Khadijah, her mother, used to go to this room and deliver her children. And that's why we know, according also to these references, where she was born, and they put a white marble. Also at the place where the Prophet himself was born, and way down, and I have seen that when I was a very little child. I came down, they brought us to see it. Also a white marble that still is there, but that place was not demolished yet. Then on the 17th of Rabi' al-Awwal, year 1342, corresponding to the 27th of October 1923, the Saudi troops led by Al-Sharif Khalid ibn Lu'ay, who was cooperating with the late King Abdulaziz, they entered Mecca, and on the second day, the 28th of October, they demolished all the tombs and all these religious places. It was demolished because according to the teachings of the Salafi sect in Islam, these things are against Islam and it has to be demolished. So it was demolished and it stayed as such for years. But then the mayor of Mecca, I wanted to see his photograph, went to the late King Abdulaziz and asked for the two places where the Prophet was born and where As-Sayyida Fatima Zahra, or sometimes they call it the house of Khadijah, Sayyida Khadijah. He asked for it and King Abdulaziz allowed him, he gave him these two places, and he built a building in the place of As-Sayyida Khadijah. That's our subject today. And for reading Quran and teaching Quran, and in the place where the Prophet was born, it is a library, and he bought libraries for that. The libraries is still there until today, but this place has another story. So it is stayed. I want to show you the very modest building that Abbas Qattan, the mayor of Mecca, you saw his picture, built. And it was built only to teach people Quran, tahfidh al-Quran, how to recite Quran. However, it did not really be used for that purpose. And maybe that's a better thing. What he did when he built this, he left everything down, and he came on the upper side and built this building. What is inside was intact. Nothing was touched there, and it stayed as such. Then later on, the whole area adjacent to the mosque were demolished in order to be part of the outskirts of the mosque, so people can stay there, so they can pray or do whatever they need. So this house, the upper part, was demolished. But when it was demolished with the crane, they went a little bit deeper, and then the mihrab was seen. So I was privileged to be able to do something in order to really record and register what you will see right now. Before I want to show you the map in Mecca, which shows this is the Holy Mosque and this is the Kaaba, and this is what we call it Mas'a, where people, they go between the two mountains. For Muslims here, they know what is Sa'i. And this is the location of the building. So it's not far from here. Yes. Now, we, as you see, erected a fence all around for the excavation of the building. As I told you before, this is the house of Abu Sufyan. This is the house of the Prophet. So this is the beginning of the work. We were working 24 hours, 150 workers. Every 8 hours, 50 people will work with their hands to clean and bring up the building. This shows the progress in our work. People were very curious to come, as you see them watching. As a matter of fact, it was very interesting. I took my wife to go to a building somewhere in here in order to see it. Women were not allowed to come here, of course. But I took my children, and they came, and we did pray in this room. Then I want to show you some additional progress in the work. Here you see, of course, the stairs coming down to this hall. This is, as we said, it's the room for guests, Hujrat al-Wufud. And here where the Prophet and his wife, Sayyida Khadijah, used to live. This is the prayer room, or Hujrat al-Wahi. And this is the room where the children of our Prophet were born. One thing interesting, you see this area, this small area, was like a storage, because Sayyida Khadijah was a merchant, I mean, she used to send people up to the north, to Gaza and the area of Palestine, and sell some merchandises and goods that they buy from the Yemeni coast from the Indians, and they sell it to the Europeans. That is, as a matter of fact, how she was interested in the Prophet, because he took for the first time what she has, and this was just before he became 25 years old, and he went and he came back with a very unusual Prophet. It wasn't known before, and that's why she even proposed to marry him, and they got married and lived in this house. So this is the room where she used to store the goods that she has to be sold. When it comes from the Yemeni place to go up to the north, it is stored in here, and then someone else, of course, other than the Prophet himself, used to do this. And then we continued working in cleaning the area and bringing the exact house. Here, you see, this is what we call it, Hujrat al-Wufud, the guest room. And here, I did this so you can understand. So this room is here. And here you can see al-Mihrab, which was built. This is al-Mihrab, which was built. Again, the same room, but from another side. You see, the other side of the room, here. What you see here is here. That is Hujrat al-Wufud, and we started cleaning, and this is an important place, because this is Hujrat al-Ta'abbud. This is where the Prophet used to worship and to receive Jibreel or Jibrail, who will teach him the Quran and stay with him and educate him. And this is the place he used to sit. Jerusalem is this side. You see, Al-Mihrab was then built to face Mecca, which is not the same direction. But this place, he used to sit here and pray this side. And of course, in these reference books, I mentioned all these things are spelled out. I mean, I'm just giving you a resume of what we did and studied. Another view graph to give you more details of the place where he used to sit. See? And those who renovated the place from the very beginning, and that's during the time of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, they put these indications so everything is known in place. Something extremely important in history books, you know, Muslims, before they pray, they have to wash, make the wudu. And you need a container for the water. We found the container that the Prophet used to put the water in it and make the wudu from it. This is the container. Of course, it's a little bit broken by age, but this is it. Then we come to the room where he lived with his wife, السيدة خديجة. This room. You see, it is here. In this room, you have the two mihrab, which was built. And here, one of the mihrab is seen, this mihrab. Another view graph to see the other mihrab. We saw in the previous view graph this mihrab. Now we see the other mihrab. Now, this is an interesting, you see, we really did clean the place very well, and we found, which is very interesting, because when the Abbasi Khalif came to renovate the building, by that time the ground in Mecca was elevated. So they built stairs, but not as much as here, and at the same time, in order to raise the floor of the building, they put what they call it the Abbasi tile. Abbasi tile is known in history to be red. We did find the Abbasi tile in here, in these areas. So this shows the real progress that we did. You come down, and this is the room, of course, of the guests, Hujrat al-Wufud, and then the rest. This one, when we were working, shows the room where the children of the Prophet were born, and where السيدة Fatima al-Zahra was born, in this room. This is in the beginning. The room was cleaned thereafter, but this was, and you see here it shows with the arrow to the room. But here it was very well cleaned, and this is the room, and this was the exact place where she was born. In the beginning, as I said, there was a white marble, and then Ahmad Effendi, the director of the Holy Mosque in Mecca, did build something around here and covered it with some silk material, and it was here until everything was then demolished. But this is the exact place where she was born, and probably the other sisters, and Al-Qasim, one of the children, but of course they all died, but some of the sisters lived, and they went to Medina, and they married, as you know, to Uthman ibn Affan, who married one after the other when the first one died. That's why they call him Dhun Nurayn. But no one have any grandchildren for the Prophet except السيدة Fatima al-Zahra. This shows the corridor which leads, this one, this is the corridor, which leads to the three rooms. Of course, Hujrat al-Ta'abbud, this is the corridor, what you see here. It goes to the Hujrat al-Ta'abbud and to the room where the Prophet lived with his wife for 28 years. And this is where the children were born and lived. Something Well, this is also, I think this is also important. This is a photograph taking from the room where the Prophet used to live with his wife. But from this room, through this door, you see all the corridor, the room for the guests, and everything. So you see, it's a very nice view from where the Prophet used to live, and this is the room for the guests, and these are the stairs coming down. This is something very important. السيدة فاطمة الزهراء used to work in the house, and she used to grind wheat, and she had a mill, and that mill is known also in history. So this is one of the photographs which the internal side of the mill. Of course the mill was broken, but there is another part for it here, like this. But that's the internal part of the mill. Another view graph will show you the external part of the mill. So much was found in this building. Of course, we did a very precise work. We studied the place for the first time, because in these history books that I read, they describe the house exactly the way you see it, but then the measurement were not accurate. Here, for the first time, with this map, we know exactly the measurements, the stairs, the rooms for the guests, even the walls, the width of the walls, everything was precisely studied and done. This map is very important. It's the result of some real work to do it. It wasn't done in a matter of hours or so. Now, of course, in order to avoid any people to come and worship the place or whatever it is, the Salafi concept in religion was against having this building exposed. They are afraid maybe Muslims, they look at it for barakah or whatever it is. So it was decided to cover it completely. And it was then covered. Here, I show you the building completely covered. Of course here, this is the Abu Sufyan building. So it was completely covered with sand. And to put an end to this story, we know exactly where is it located. So this map shows exactly, this is the Holy Mosque, and this is As-Safa and Marwa, Al-Mas'a, and this area is with the other areas also around the mosque. This is the exact location of the building, which is now part of the adjacent area around the mosque. I think I've given you the results of the work of a long time with real efforts. And we're glad we did it, because this is a historical place. in the history of Muslims. It's a place where our Prophet lived with his wife for 28 years. She died in this house, and immediately after her death, he was really in love with her, and he decided, of course, to leave the city of Mecca, and he immigrated from this house. And he put his cousin Imam Ali in the same room in order to cheat the people who decided to kill him, and he was able to escape. And next day they discovered that the man sleeping in that room, you saw the room where he used to sleep, was not the Prophet, it was Imam Ali. So he immigrated also from this house. His daughter, As-Sayyida Fatima, was born in the house 18 years before he immigrated, and then she followed him to Medina. So that is the story of the house from day one until now. I hope I was able in a very short period of time to give you what we did in a long period of time with real difficulties. And thank you very much.